This meeting is being recorded.
Perfect. So this session should take us 2 hours. So I just uploaded the workbook. Again, print it or use it as you need to, but I want you to be more interactive and take notes. The goal setting, it doesn't like the spreadsheet, but that's fine. I'll email it to you. Like as soon as we get done with the Zoom, you'll get the email with the spreadsheet because I really don't want you to use it until we kind of explain it. Okay. All right. So I'm recording. Let me share screen. Multitasking is not my thing. All right. So let me give you a little bit of a breakdown of what we're going to do today versus what we're going to do tomorrow, because it's the same time tomorrow at 9:30 for 2 hours. Day one that we've set up for today is we're going to reflect on last year or this past year. We're going to also do some exercise around quality of life, because maybe in the last 2 to 3 years, we kind of got off balance with our quality of life. And then we are going to actually walk you through how to calculate your numbers the proper way. A lot of times it's how many houses do I want to sell in what volume. That's not how you set goals. You back into what kind of life you want, what type of income you want, and then we push forward the other numbers. So we're going to show you using a calculator. We put in an Excel spreadsheet how to do that. Okay, so that's day one. Tomorrow, when you come back, we're actually going to review some homework that we're going to give you. Then the second thing we're going to do is actually come up with a plan for the next 3 months. So it's great that you guys are hopping and listening to this and doing the activities in November, because obviously then you'll start having higher results in January. And then we're also going to talk about how to keep your habits going, because once kind of New Year's hits and like January 10th happens, we tend to fall off on those goals or resolutions. So we're going to talk about how to maintain habits going into next year. So it makes sense. Day one has a different flavor than day two. That's why we break it apart. Okay. All right, so let me click through this. All right, so you may have noticed that any workbook or training that we do, we always tend to put this slide in. It's Be, Do, Have. It's out of Think and Grow Rich. And so I'm gonna let MG take the stage here. And I don't know if everybody's met MG, but Garner Devoe is our director of training. She's been with us over a month now, but she has been a trainer and coach for over 30 years in the industry. So MG, would you walk us through Be, Do, Have to kind of tee us up for the day?
I sure will. Thank you so much. Happy Monday, everybody.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things I love about Be, Do, Have is it is exactly the opposite of how most of us are conditioned to think. We tend to think, okay, well, when I have my new computer, or when I have my new phone, or I need my new car, I need my new office, I need whatever, and then I'll do what I need to do so that then I can be who I want to be. Okay?
True.
And it's exactly the opposite of that. Okay? You have to decide, we have to decide, who do we intend to be? Who do we aspire to be? What is the person, the life we want to be? Okay. And so in order to be that, what does that person do? Okay. And so then we do what we need to do, and then we will have the things we want to have. So think of it this way. Miss America doesn't get the crown and the sash and the roses and then learn how to walk in high heels and a bathing suit and twirl a baton, right?
True.
I mean, that's funny, but think about it. She had to decide, I want to be Miss America. And so for me to have that crown and I want to be that person, then she had to learn how to twirl a baton or sing a song or, walk in high heels. Or think about, I love using Russell Wilson because even though it's not going so great in Denver, he's a hometown, guy. Russell Wilson was too short. He went to a little tiny prep school that never had a good athlete come out of it. But his dad said, why not you, Russ? Why not you? So it's like, who did he want to be? The best, excellence. So he did the things he needed to do to have that life, to have that career. And then I also like using him because Drew and I believe that when we decide who we want to be and we do those things so that we can have those things, then we can add the fourth and highest level, which is give.
Yeah, add that underneath your notes. Be, do, have,
Give.
is. Because I
And
think
here's
once
the
you hit
deal.
that level, you're
It's
feeling a whole different level. Yeah.
well, that's right. And you can't give what you don't have.
Right.
So having a life of abundance and having a lot just empowers you to do way more.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense, guys. I want you guys to really kind of listen to that, because I think especially in goal setting, a lot of times you just want to have the goal at the end. You just want to rush to how many houses do I want to sell in volume, or you just want to hit that. Okay, now I know I want to sell 50 houses this year. But really, we got to get into the mindset of like, okay, maybe it is 50 houses, but what do I need to become to be able to hit that goal? What do I need? How early do I need to wake up? What do I need to dress like? What type of people do I need to surround myself with? And then, of course, then you go into action, which all entrepreneurs do. With the do, we're builders. Like entrepreneurs, we constantly do, which is not necessarily great, because if you don't think about who I want to become or the future forward, you might be doing the wrong activities.
well, have you ever heard the phrase, we are human beings? We are not human doings.
Yeah.
And we tend to run our lives sometimes, or we let life run us to where we really are just human doings running on a hamster wheel. So it's,
Totally.
before you, like, what's your vision? Is it to be fit and healthy? And okay, so what do I need to do to be that person, and start being that person by doing those things?
Yeah.
So
Very important. And so I just want to get us into the right mind space
yeah,
on a Monday morning. The next thing I want us to do, we kind of went over kind of the agenda. So that's kind of the path forward. But I want to really talk about the fact that, like, we all talk about mindset a lot. But I don't know if some of you have a negative mindset around goal setting. So sometimes when we set a goal and we don't hit the goal, maybe when we were a teenager, maybe we were in high school or college, we get disenchanted with goals. So that's why when we kind of started this initial start of this session, I want to think you got to think bigger. And sometimes as adults, that has been squashed, shrunk because of either failures that we've had in our lives, or because people around us said, oh, that's too big, or you'll never hit that, or you'll never be successful in doing that. I don't know if anybody has ever had that experience, but we see that a lot when we're goal setting. You set smaller goals because it's, quote, safe, versus setting a larger goal because of that, unfortunately, a limiting mindset connected to our environment. So I want you to think about that. Is that where you're going into this goal setting? When you look at a number, let's say, again, you sold 40 houses this year and you want to sell 70 houses next year. Is that big for you? Is that small for you? What does that number represent? And, I want you to, it's beyond the numbers. It's really connected to the mindset. Okay. All right. So in the workbook, it has these questions, but I want you to write these down in your notes, because this is homework for you tonight. We're going to reflect on these tomorrow. So make sure you're writing these down. So in order for us to set a goal for next year, it's really important for anybody to do a debrief on how the year went. Think of it like, someone going in, let's say the military going into a situation where they're actually going to infiltrate a village or go into war, right? They have the plan, they actually execute the plan, and it always doesn't go according to plan. And then they do a debrief at the end of their mission or their original plan. So you may have set at this very type of workshop last year, set a goal and what you need to do and what we want you to do. And the reason why I want you to do this as homework is we want you to think about this in a quiet space. We want you to really think through some of these answers. So what went right? What went wrong? What goals did I set? What goals did I hit? Where did my goals fall short? what was in my control and what was out of my control.
You know
And
what
one
I
of the, yep, go ahead, Minji. Yeah.
Well, I just had this aha as you were talking. Really and truly, set aside some time and some quiet space and sit with these questions. Think of it like an athlete watching game film
Yep.
after a game, okay? Except with the coaches, except we're gonna kind of review the game film of 2022 thus far. And please understand, sometimes, because something only worked or got 85% of what you thought it would, doesn't mean it necessarily needs to be scraped. It may need, maybe it does need to be abandoned, but maybe it just needs a tweak.
Yeah.
Like think about how a golfer holds their stance or a batter holds their bat, or, it's this reviewing your game film will give you some, I think, give you some real clarity and perspective on, oh, I didn't realize that did so well for me. And gosh, if I had just focused on it a little more, it would have done a whole lot better. So,
huge point, because a lot of entrepreneurs abandon something and then try to rebuild something completely new when you may have been just on the cusp of that domino falling, right? The momentum was just right there. So let's say farming a neighborhood, or let's say really tapping into your sphere of influence. Maybe you're like, oh, I didn't get anything out of my sphere of influence this year, or maybe I didn't get anything out of my farm neighborhood. Well, you might be 1 month away from it starting that kind of light switch to turn on. And if you abandon it or kind of try to reinvent the wheel, like what MG was saying, sometimes it's just keep swinging at the bat. Eventually, you're going to hit the ball. So I want you to really go through this. Actually, we're going to we'll inspect what we expect. So we will definitely cover this tomorrow. Again, you'll see this slide again. But I want you to really think about what went right, wrong, and so on and so forth. And take some good notes. I honestly sometimes go through my calendar because I can't remember what the heck I did 6 months ago, right? So what kind of appointments were you going on? What type of listings did you have? What type of buyers were you working with? What marketing materials were you sending out in April, May, June of this past year? You probably forgot, and it probably was pretty doggone good. Or maybe it fell short and you can give it a little facelift and maybe repurpose it for 2023. So really
maybe
important.
You started out intending to do it and you did it, and then you stopped and you forgot that you stopped.
Amen. That's what I do often. I'm like,
So
man, that was a good idea.
Your calendar is really, I love that.
Yeah, I do that a lot and go, wow, I can't believe I had May I had 7 appointments that month. And you're like, wow, that was a busy month. What caused me to have that many appointments in May? And reflecting back sometimes helps that. All right. So make sure you're doing that. All right. So now we're going to go into a good size, probably 15, 20-minute exercise. But before we head into that, I want to kind of break the ceiling of what we call this R word called recession. So many of you in the last 3 months may have been hearing this word. I think a lot of lenders are talking about it in any agent group chats that I'm talking about it. The market is definitely different, right? And so it's, quote, slower in this market. And so agents, real estate agents, vendors, lenders, buyers, sellers don't necessarily always like quiet. And so we're coming out of this frenzy of the last 3 years. And so I wanted to kind of debunk the word recession. So one of the things that I want you to realize is that recession is 2 consecutive quarters of declining GDP, right? So it's the US market declining. So we have several of them throughout the history of the United States. So if you look at the graph that we're showing, the black bars are the recession. The white line that's kind of wiggly that's going up is actually home prices. So if you're reflecting backwards, the only recession that caused prices to go down, so you see that right in between 05 and 10. So if you were in the real estate market, roughly in the 2008 market, that's when prices crashed. So it actually was a parallel challenge because there was recession happening at the same time, and then it was the housing crisis at the same time. Recession and housing prices don't normally match. So if you look at all these black bars with recession, prices still go up, right? And so we're in 2020, officially going in from 2020 was a recession, and what looks like we're heading into another one just based on the GDP. But that is good news for us in our industry because we are a livelihood. We have to have this product in order to survive. It's shelter, food, and clothing, right? We have to eat, we have to be dressed, and we have to have a roof over our head. And the beautiful thing about what we're positioned going into 2023 is that the recession causes a reset for a lot of the economic things. Inflation is a challenge, right? We're looking at interest rates. So what it's doing when you go through a recession, and I've been through two personally in my real estate career, is it does a good reset. It kind of reshifts and reallocates where financial pieces need to be. So I want you to realize that if we're going into 2023 and you have this fear mongrel mindset, like you just are nervous about what that means, it is actually of abundance. And I'm going to flip to this slide and we can kind of debrief MG, and you and I can kind of chat about this because MG's been through 3 or 4 as well, just being in the industry.
Older.
Well, in the industry for 30 years. So, but the economy is changing, inflation is real, that's great. But the reason why we put these logos up is all of these companies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 companies, 1, 2, 3, 4, I can't spell, 4 companies, all have thrived out of recessions. Specifically Disney, Procter & Gamble, Microsoft. Every time that there was a blip in the radar from an economic standpoint, these businesses thrived and actually took what they call, and what we also call in real estate, market share. They took more pieces of the pie than they originally did when they were going into that down market. The one I added, which was DoorDash, is in the center. It actually is thriving out of what we all know to be the COVID, right? So I personally knew DoorDash existed, but I never used it. And then when COVID occurred, DoorDash became a huge player. Their stock grew 89% just in the first 6 months of the recession, because it was providing a service, a necessity that we needed to obviously weather the storm through COVID. So how do we take this story of all of these amazing Fortune 500 companies and take it into 2023 as this is our time to take our market share. This is our time to be fierce about what's real, what's right, and we need to have purpose and intentionality. So I want you to really flip your mindset around the R word called recession.
And I want to just throw in, because having more experience, the perspective I love in this, Procter & Gamble, that company, and I still haven't read the book, but I'm going to, that company was founded in 1837. Okay. Now, many of you, I think there are only like 2 or 3 left on television, but you all know about soap operas, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So there used to be probably 27 soap operas on at any given time. They were 30-minute shows, and people watched them religiously. They were all sponsored by Procter & Gamble. That's why they were called soap operas, because that's household cleaning products, soap, laundry detergent, and the housewives, everybody, all women were at home, watch them. So obviously the world changed and how we live changed, but there's Procter & Gamble, after reinventing itself and staying ahead of the curve, decade after decade, after century. And so all dogs can learn new tricks.
Yep. And a lot of things, I think one of the beautiful things about real estate agents is that we learned to pivot, and we learned to be very flexible with the market, right? I give it so many examples in COVID where we thought the plan was this and we had to pivot and shift into something else. And many of you guys have had some of the best years of your careers the last 2 to 3 years, which is amazing because we made that shift and change. So, all right. So I want you to get your pens or pencils out. I want you to get you a clean piece of paper, because you're going to need the whole 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So make sure you grab a piece of paper, and we're going to walk through this. So John Maxwell wrote a book called Put Your Dream to the Test. It's a great book. I personally think it's the most underrated, but it's like, as far as like his books, he's got many famous books. This book to me is one of the best ones he's written, because he talks about the fact that when we're going into goals and we're going into business goals, sometimes we forget to dream. But one of the biggest things is that we don't realize that our business is connected to our quality of life. So he put in this book this chart, which has got 6 key components of what, quote, a quality of life is, right? So I'm just going to walk through this, and then we're going to do a little miniature art project. And I have a whiteboard. I'm going to draw it as you guys are drawing it on your 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. But we are all connected to some spirituality, whether it's organized religion or not. Your key relationships, family, business, that's where obviously it's connected to goal planning and setting for that. Personal, and then your physical health. So those are the 6 things that when you're building a plan and when you're going over your goals, we have to consider that. And many workshops I've been to, they only spoke about the business. Sell more houses, increase more volume, increase your price point, make more money. And I can tell you personally that I've had a thriving business, and the other 5 key items in my life weren't of high quality. They weren't, if you're looking at the scale from 1 being not great, 10 being the best you could live. I can tell you personally, those 5 are off kilter. And so this is what I want you to draw, and I'm going to exit screen and we'll go into what we call a whiteboard. But I want you to draw this like circular, MJ, I know you call almost like spokes in a wheel concept. So I'm going to exit the screen. I'm going to go into a little whiteboard. So again, can you guys see my screen good? You're good? So your quality of life in the middle, right? That's the circle that we were just looking at. And then there's 6 key bubbles or circles that we connect to. So 1, and don't make fun of my drawings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So I want you to make something on your piece of paper that looks like this, because what we want to do is we want to look at what your spiritual life is, what your relationships are, what your family looks like, what your health looks like, what you look like personally. So that's more mindset and personal growth. And then of course your business. So yours should look like some crazy looking monster messed up flower like mine. But I want you to really think about that. So going back into the presentation and kind of reflecting that, I want you to think about 2017. I want you to write on the piece of paper what age you were in 2017. I had to actually take my calculator out because I wasn't great with math 5 years ago. So I was 37 years old personally. And I also want you to write any important person in your life, your kids, your spouse, your partner, your mom, your dad, like what were their ages back in 2017, right? So I was 37 years old in 2017. My daughter, Emma, was 12 years old and she was in 7th grade, which is crazy because she's now a senior in high school. But the reason why I want you to reflect back is that it's really important to see where you've gone and what you've come from in 5 years, because I think a 5-year snapshot of what your life looked like 5 years ago versus where you're sitting at today at your desk at this session is important for you to kind of look at. So inside each one of those little circles, I want you to rank where you felt your quality of life was. So in your spiritual circle, I want you to think 1 being I had really no spiritual connection there, all the way to 10 that you felt really connected spiritually to the universe or to an organized religion that you believe in, right? What is your score for your spirituality? Key relationships, right? What would that look like? And key relationships could be business, but it generally is connected to what those circle of influence, those friends, who were you hanging out with? So what were the key relationships, 1 from a scale of 1 to 10? Did you feel like they were healthy for you? Did they feel like they were lifting you up? Did they feel like they were giving you what you needed back in 2017? Same thing with family. How was your family life? Did you struggle? Were you excited? Were you happy? Did you guys go on an amazing trip in 2017? What did that look like? Physical health? Ugh, this one could be a doozy, right? Maybe what did you weigh in 2017? What dress size or what pant size did you have? What was that looking like then? And then your personal and then your business. If you weren't in real estate 5 years ago, your business could be obviously connected to your corporate job or another job that you had. What were you doing in 2017? So I want to make sure you're doing this because this will be kind of connected to the second piece of your homework that we'll reflect on. Okay. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to finish it up, but all I need is a 1 through 10 on each little circle, bubble, 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 all the way through. So it doesn't have to go too complicated and too deep. Then we're going to do it again. So I want you to draw a second circle, maybe flip the piece of paper over. This is 2022, which is the year obviously we're in. And we're going to go back through the same cycle again, right? So what was your spirituality, relationships, family, physical health, personal, and your business? So what are those rankings now? And I want you to take some time on this because most likely there's a shift or a change. So when I'm going to go screen, if I go back to 2017, my personal journey was I was 37 years old with a 12-year-old. And obviously now I'm 42-year-old with a 17-year-old, right? So my life looks very different than it did 5 years ago. And many of you know my personal story and challenge with what's happened over the last year. So it was very humbling to be able to do this exercise. And I'll pause in a second. My family has done this circle, qualified circle, for the last 5 years. My daughter does it. My wife did it with me. Actually, my in-laws come over and we have lasagna and we actually do it together. So it might even be a great activity for you guys to do with friends or family. It's interesting when you're doing this to have conversations about, oh, remember 5 years ago we went on this trip. Or remember I used to look like this and I've gained some weight since COVID. So MG, what is your take on that reflection piece of going from 5 years ago to currently where we're at? Well, when you went through this exercise, what was your thought process?
Well, I think what's important is that we zero in on the different pieces of our life that all make the whole. And there will be changes, and some of them may, when you examine them, may be a little startling or unsettling. And this isn't to make you, it's not to discourage you. This is to get real so that you can get right.
Correct.
And the reality is, of course, this is about having some balance in your life. And the reality is there is no perfect balance. Okay. And which is why we have to examine these things. We should more often than we do. Think about the two images that I think of is a tightrope walker walking across a tightrope. They've got that bar. Well, they're not just holding it steady and walking right across. They're like this the whole time, right? It's when they whoa that they get in trouble. Or think about a ballerina on point, on toe. She's not just standing like this. She's doing this, counterbalancing all the time. And that's how life is. It's just when we get way out of balance, then our wheel is not turning and it puts strain on things. So this awareness, and this is important because this will make you a better business person as well.
Yeah, it's all connected. And unfortunately, in real estate, I tend to see people, their relationships are strained the most. I hate to say this, but we have a high divorce rate. We have a higher, we drink more alcohol, we gain more weight. Like, it's a stressful industry. So sometimes when we don't have that counterbalance, like MG was saying, it's taken out on something else. It's taken out on someone in a relationship when you're having a stressful day and you just walk in the door and rip their head off, right? Or maybe it's lack of time with your family because you've been showing buyers all day and weren't able to spend some time with your kids, right? So I probably would say out of all the industries that reflect on, real estate is one that when you get out of balance, it is hard to get that counterbalance equally reset. So, all right. So I want you guys to kind of think through what that 5-year recap or recast looks like. And then the cool thing is that somebody once told me in a room full of some really top producing agents that you can be anywhere in 5 years. In fact, I think it was Gary Keller himself said that. And we were in Austin, Texas, and I remember him saying that, and it was like, I don't know about that, right? And the coolest thing and the coolest thing that I have found is that, as being in the industry as long as I have, and in GU as well, it's crazy what 5 years. If 5 years seems like a century, and what you look like, what you've accomplished. And so the cool thing about real estate is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I mean, there is no ceiling to what 5 years could be. So again, thinking big, what does it look like in the next 5 years? So I want you to not necessarily, obviously you don't have the crystal ball of ranking what 5 years from now, but 2027 would be the year. I want you to take that piece of paper out, because we're going to answer these questions. Again, this is part of your homework. How old will you be in 2027? So 5 years from now. I was doing the math for myself. That's insane to me. I'll be almost 50 years old. I'll be 47, which
Cry
is
me a river.
beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, right? But where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? What is your plan to get there? And who's going to hold you accountable to your plan? So many times that when we do business planning clinics, we think probably 6 months or a year out. The difference between this one is, I want you to think 5 years out. Maybe you're a solo agent and you have dreams and aspirations to building a team within 5 years. Good, write that down. Maybe you want to start your own brokerage. I don't know. Maybe you want to do that. Maybe you want to start investment properties and own 10 rental properties by the time you're 5 years in, right? Maybe you want to flip real estate. Maybe you want to retire. Maybe you're just saying, hey, I'm near the end of this career and I want to build an exit strategy for myself, right? All of that's connected to business, but each one of these circles, what are those key relationships? What do they look like? What would you think your spiritual life would look like in 5 years? So all of that's connected. So inside the workbook has what action steps you need to get started today. So one thing inside each quality of life circle that you can start working on today as of November 14th, 2022, right? Because we know whatever we start focusing on now expands. What you focus on expands. So what do we got to focus on? We got to identify, right? So what is the one thing that's connected to your 5-year plan for your business, personal, health, relationship, spiritual, and family, right? What are those 6 key components? And the reason why we set this up is because day 2, tomorrow, we're going to build out a plan, right? And it's not going to be a fluffy plan. It's not going to be something that's even all business based. It's going to be encompassing of what the quality of life circles are connected to. So let's just say physical health, that you want to run a marathon, right? And maybe that's a 5-year plan, maybe that's a 2-year plan, maybe that's a 1-year plan. But what is the first activities you're going to need to do in order to run that marathon that you're committed to? Okay. So make sure, basically you have kind of 2 sets of homework there, all connected to the circle of the quality of your life. Okay.
Can I just say one thing?
Of course.
Well, with these circles, another relevant thing is, the more clear we are about our intentions, who we want to be, who we intend, desire to be, the more clear we are, we will be more intentional and purposeful about what we do.
In our
Because
time.
really and truly, Drew talks about habit stacking all the time. And I mentioned this a few weeks ago. When I was growing up, I remember the headmistress of the school I went to had across, like, these little banners across the chalkboards, which yes, we had back then, but it said in every classroom, who you are to be, you are now becoming.
It's so good.
And I think that mantra has stuck with me, and I can't say I've always cherished it, but everything we do is a stepping stone or a building block. Everything we don't do. So
Yes. So
I just
great.
feel like that's very important and makes us respect and the power of the actions and choices that we take.
Well, and I love that you said that because one of the things is real estate agents, we tend to say yes to everything. And when you get clear about what your quality of life and what you're trying to build in a 5-year cycle there, you also learn what to say no to, right? So you may have a lot of business opportunities or a lot of personal opportunities with family and friends, and maybe a lot of opportunities in all those circles, but some of them are not the right fit for you, right? So you're going to have to say no to many of those opportunities. And when you have clarity on what you want, you don't feel guilty for saying no. You're like, no, that's not for me, or that's not right now. It's not meant for my vision of what my quality of life is. And that's so gives you freedom when you say no. And so many times, maybe I'm internally reflecting, but when I say no to something, I feel like crap. I feel like, man, I'm letting someone down. But in reality, if I know clearly that this is not a good alignment with for me, no is the win-win, because I wouldn't have been able to give the quality of that relationship to that person or that business because my heart wasn't in it. So I think, MG, what you're saying is you gotta know clearly what you're going to say yes to and no to. Okay.
Well, exactly. And another thought is, if somebody wants, you've got an area of expertise, and somebody says, Shonda, I have a commercial property in Waynesboro. Okay. Well, legally, according
can
to
do
the
it.
law, you're licensed to do that. I think a lot of times we get carried away by dollar signs, and the reality is you got no business doing a commercial property in Waynesboro yourself. It's where you pick up the phone, find somebody, refer it to, make more dollars per hour than you've ever made in your life because it was a phone call, and stay true to who you are and what your expertise is. So
Yeah, and pick up probably 4 more pieces of business locally in your backyard, So we're going to switch gears a little bit. So basically the last 40 minutes, we've kind of talked a lot of emotional connection stuff, which is hugely important to your mindset and how you create goals. But we're now actually going to start going into the number part of things. So this is the second half of this, and then we'll get through this, and you'll have the rest of your amazing day to be productive and do some homework for tomorrow. So one of the things that we all have to be aware of is that we are the CEO of our business, and we got to know our numbers. And so maybe you have not tracked your numbers well this year. This will be the first year where you're going to reset and really track this. So this might be homework for you, because you need to have these numbers in order for you to use the calculator, which is the Excel spreadsheet that we're going to email you. You've got to have those to be able to accurately put in some data, right? So total units, volume, average sales price. I would give a caveat of average sales price. I would like you to break that apart by seller sales price and buyer sales price, because what we tend to see is they're not the same. It's moving up, moving down market, right? They may have sold $300,000 house and maybe they bumped up to a $500,000 house. Your average sales price might be 2 different things. So make sure you kind of know what that is. But we do need one number, but I want you to know that there might be a variation. So I want you to at least have that. You can kind of have that caveat. Seller units versus buyer units, right? It's not just I sold 50 houses. What percentage of my business came from listings? What percentage came from buyers? Tracking your top lead sources. I would love for you to go so granular that you know the 3, but you know them based on a percentage. So maybe it's open houses, sphere of influence, and it's farming, right? So out of all the deals you've got this year, what percentage of those leads gave you that return on that investment? Because we need to reflect on that, because we need to start building a plan tomorrow on using those lead sources and to just squeeze all the juice out of your sphere of influence. If you're not getting, if your sphere of influence is roughly, less than 48 to 50%, so that's not the biggest chunk of your business this past year, we got to squeeze more juice out of that. We need roughly 50% of your business to come from that primary lead source which is your sphere of influence. Also, what it maybe all of your leads came from sphere of influence. Maybe you're at 90% sphere of influence. That's not necessarily good either, because we want to be able to have those two other lead sources. So in the event that something shifts or changes, you can have healthy streams of income coming into your business. So if you say I only have one lead source, 98% referral, which I hear that a lot, that's not necessarily great because you put all your eggs in that basket. So we're going to have to diversify and see if we can grab 2 more lead sources going into 2023. Last 2 things, gross commission income. That's the big check, right? That's the commission before anybody takes any splits or commissions or taxes or anything. And then net earnings, of course, is backing out all of your expenses and what we call cost of sale. So
A word of caution too, when you are working on your average sales price and total volume sold,
Mhm.
if you have an outlier, I mean, these numbers are, you want to be real. So let's say typically you sell in the $400,000 to $500,000 range, but you had a 2.5 or a $3.1 million sale. That was, now, if you sell a lot of stuff around $1 million and above, that's one thing. But if you had an outlier,
yeah,
then I would take that out. I'm not discounting it, but just so that you get real, because
that's a unicorn. That was an anomaly that doesn't, I mean, you want the money and you wanted the relationship, but would that be a consistent indicator that you can predict? So that's good.
especially if it's from a lead source, let's say it was your parents' house. Okay. Well,
Right.
that's probably not gonna, now, if it's a lead source that you get stuff from, then maybe you examine, ooh, how could I raise that price point more? But for these purposes, don't hoodwink.
Yeah.
Let's be honest with ourselves so that
Yeah.
we don't have an outlier.
And no one's going to see these numbers but you. So let's just be honest with yourself. It's not like we're blasting all this to the world. But I think being real is, fiercely real is where we're at. Don't fluffing up the numbers is going to help anybody give you a true picture of what 23 will look like. So good point. All right. And we all know we've seen this 1,000 times, but I want to make sure, because it gets a little squishy when we talk about goals and numbers, that's smart. The biggest thing for me is that it has to be measurable, right? The M to me is one of the biggest letter acronyms of this. Like, I'm not just going to make some phone calls. I want to know specifically, I'm going to make 5 phone calls a day or whatever that is. The second one to me that would be important is attainable. I believe, and I've always coached based on a lot of books and my own personal habits, is that you need stair-step goals that need to be attainable, right? So it's thinking big, but there's steps to get to that big, right? So if I sold 40 houses this year and I think I'm going to sell 80 next year, I'm excited about thinking big, and yet that's a 100% increase. You're doubling what you did the year before. Is that attainable based on your activities? And is it based on your plan? Is it based on the economy? Is it based on so make sure when you're setting goals, there is some confirmation of some attainability to it. And I would coach you maybe to stair step it. Maybe again, if you do want to double your business, let's set a first quarter goal of getting to 10, and then we'll reevaluate, and we'll just keep climbing that stair step ladder each quarter. Make sense? So make sure they're smart, no squishy, fluffy stuff. All right, so we're going to go into a little bit of the meat of calculating your numbers. We are going to use what we call the economic model. It comes out of a book called Millionaire Real Estate Agent, and if you've not read it, you should. And it's actually easy to digest, even using Audible. But it's really more of a manual. So the one that I have, I've had for years. It's torn. It's got Post-it notes. It's got handwriting in it. It's all kinds of stuff. So it's not a book. It's really a manual. And ultimately what this book was created for was a roadmap or a model of how someone was to set up a business in real estate. And so they interviewed agents, $1 million producer agents throughout the United States, many different brokerages. And they said, how did you do it? What are you doing in your business that caused you to create enough abundance of $1 million in your business? and they created what they call the 4 models. And so today we're going to literally go through the economic model in like 10 minutes. I'm originally from Keller Williams, MG as well. We used to do 6 to 8 hour sessions just on the economic model. So you're welcome. We're only going to do it in 20 minutes, 15 minutes. But it's a tried and true process, because real estate should just be duplicated. It shouldn't be reinvented. So when you're creating goals, we're going to use the economic model. So we created a spreadsheet, and this is the spreadsheet you're going to receive via email. As soon as I hop off here, I'll send it to you. And it's very simple. It's literally got 3 categories. It's got the green on the top. It's got the blue and this peachy tan color on the right, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through the green box together. And everything that you see that is in the darker green is what you can change. So inside that Excel spreadsheet, you can obviously from top to bottom change those items. The beauty of this is that it calculates your volume and your sold units and your income and everything at the bottom for you. So again, you don't have to calculate it like I did or MG and I did. This is a little bit of a cheat sheet for that. But I want to go over some basic terminology to make sure you understand what you're plugging your numbers into. First of one that I want you to see the top net income, and also want you to take in your notes that this is what we would consider your profit, right? This is a lot of real estate agents is how much do you want to make? And then they back out all the numbers. This example is saying how much do you want to profit, or what that net income is. Because ultimately, if you want to walk away with, let's say in this example, 250,000, you're actually going to have to make, if you look down at this example, 321,000, right? So it's important to know what we're going to walk away. Because if you open a hot dog shop, you open a car dealership, you want to know after everything has been paid, what you're going to end up, what you're going to take home. That's what's important to you, right? That's going to fund that quality of life circles. That's going to fund those trips. That's what you're paying the bills for, is to see what the end result is. So when you're doing this calculator, and I'm going to hop into the calculator and actually just show you a little demo of it, that net income is going to be a good number, because it needs to be what it is after these things. I want to give clarity on the difference between an expense and what we call COS, which is cost of sale. A lot of people think everything is expense, and in real estate, it is not. We break them into 2 separate categories. An expense, and MG loves that I simplify this. Is not like the Webster's dictionary of this. This is Drew's version of it. It's an expense will be spent if you sell 0 houses, if you sell no homes. So obviously like cell phone bill, that's important. Gas, anything that you have an expense. MLS dues, fees, RAR fees, whether you sell a house this year or not, RAR wants their money, right? Cost of sale, though, is things that if you sell a house, then it costs you money, right? So most traditional is probably a brokerage split or a transaction coordinator fee, right? Those are the most common things that we see. If you are on a team, a referral fee would be a good one too, because you're paying out whatever the X percentage is to that agent in Florida or Texas that gave you the deal, right? Also, if you guys are teams, cost of sale is connected to the splits, right? Because if you are the rainmaker, the leader of your team, and you took your own lead, you're not having to pay anybody or split that money with anybody. But if, let's say you have a buyer's agent, and let's say that your buyer's agent is on a 50% split, so you're going to earn 50% of that income. But the cost of sale is you're giving that other 50% to that buyer's agent. So those need to be separated out when you're tracking your money. Number one, you need to hold both of those accountable. There is a rule, and I want you to write this down. It's called 30-30-40. And so 30% of overall expenses are 30%. Overall expenses for cost of sale should be 30%. And your income, your net income, your profit should be 40%. Now, when I'm saying 30-30-40, that's based off that Millionaire Real Estate Agent Red Book. It's off of $1 million business, right? That's thinking big. You can do that. So yours might not be at 30%, right? Your 30% expense, your 30% cost of sale might not be that high, because you're not netting that $1 million number. But I want you to realize it's kind of proportionate to each other. That's why I wanted you to mention the 30-30-40. Gross income and net income, obviously the difference is just subtracting out the cost of sale and expenses, okay? So let me hop off of here and open up the spreadsheet. I want to kind of walk you through that real quick. So you're going to have this exact spreadsheet. There is tabs on it. So it's got the goal calculator, a budget, a marketing plan, and a pipeline. But right now we're just navigating through the goal calculator. So again, it'll give you a percentage base here. If you don't know what your expenses are, your cost of sale, I would really encourage you to start working on tracking that. AKA, we have a budget for you. So everything that you would possibly need to spend money on in real estate, it's here. And in this budget model, you can type the budget in, and then you can actually type the actual in. What I did was give you some examples. This is just, I put some language in here just to help you navigate. What you really should do is then delete this and put your real listing income, your real buyer income, and so forth. So the beauty of this is if you're starting to track your business for next year, this can be a very simple way to figure out what your net income is and to see what you're spending your money on. Also, if you have a CPA or accountant, they will love you because they can use this as a way to calculate your income for taxes. All right, so going back to this, let's just play with some numbers. So let's say I want to make 100,000. I'm going to bump my, see that's 22%. Let's say I know I didn't spend that. Let's say I spent 20,000. Let's say I spent 22,000. So those should be somewhat proportionate. A lot of times they're slightly off kilter, but you want to see those ratios of expenses and cost of sale. If you don't know what your cost, you should know what your cost of sale is because you should know what your splits were, like how much money your brokerage took from you, or if you sent out a referral. So you should go through your transaction and say, what did I have to pay in order to earn the commission I had? Expenses might be just the best guess if you haven't been tracking it. Average sales price, again, remember, I want you to kind of split the buyer and seller average sales price, but then you're going to have to come up with one number. So maybe like a median price would be a better average sales price. So let's just say it was a little bit lower. Let's say it's 250,000. Do you see how the numbers start to change? So if I went to 350,000, that volume column is not adding up right. I'll work on that before I send it to you guys. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to do that. So beauty of it is maybe your average price point is higher. I'm sorry, lower right now. Maybe your average is 200,000. The biggest thing is that maybe that's one of your goals is to get that higher, right? Because if you really look at the difference, if you sold, you'd have to sell 25 houses in this example. You'd have to sell 14, almost 15 if you increase that sales price, right? So literally the definition of working smart versus hard, right? Your average commission, you need to know what that is, right? So very easy to calculate is you take your total volume that you sold this past year divided by how many units you sold. What I recommend, just like what MG said, is take those anomalies as outliers out of it. So you get an accurate commission amount, a good sales price. Because if you put in that $1 million deal that you got or your parents' house, like MG suggested, it's going to throw these numbers off. Okay. So step one is to do this green box and to calculate that based on what that number is. Okay. Any questions about that? Should be pretty easy. So we're going to go over to these two. I don't have to switch over to the slides because it's pretty much the same concept on the screen. Your business is broken into two things, right? So you know that you have a full-time listing business and you have a full-time buying business. And until you're leveraged to a point where you maybe have a team and maybe you focus on listings and your buyer agents works on buyers, or some now teams do both, but you're running two full businesses. Listings cost money, right? Signs, lock boxes, staging, right? So there's a higher cost of sale. What's that?
Photography,
Yeah, photography. There's so many other things connected to listings than there would be buyers. Buyers are, quote, cheaper in the sense of gas money and time is mostly what buyers do. Occasionally you will pay for a home warranty or you'll pay for closing gifts and things like that. But mostly listings cost you a little bit more money, but the long-term, we'll go into a different class, long-term listings actually have a higher reward because they usually give more referrals. That's usually more sustainable in the marketplace because people see your for sale sign in the yard. So it gives you some more marketability to yourself. So the reason why I say all that is that you need to know what your business looks like. So this is what percentage of my business comes from listings and buyers. So let's say I'm kind of in reverse. Maybe I'm hitting about 60% of my business is going to come from listings. Let's say 40% is going to come from buyers, right? So that obviously these two numbers make the whole number. But you need to, again, if you want to look at your business of last year, if you feel happy with that number, plug in those percentages. Maybe it's, not exactly 60-40. Maybe it's, 75-25. A lot of clients right now are heavier with buyers because inventory was low. We've been in a crazy market. So maybe you are at like 70% buyers and 30% sellers. And maybe you don't like that. Maybe that's something you want to change in 2023. Okay. So you're going to change those darker colored shaded numbers. Sold conversion. I want you guys to realize that there always will be some type of fallout. So when you have a listing, will they all sell? You're going to say, yes, the market's crazy. Well, we're seeing more price reductions and more expired listings happening because sellers are not realistic. Sellers have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder thinking that they can just, sell their house for high dollars. But now we're going to a normalized market. So you might have a little bit of fallout because the seller doesn't have reasonable expectations of what the market is. And you might be skilled to overcome those objections, and yet sellers could be stubborn. Sold conversion on buyers. We put 90%. Interest rates creep up. They have in the last 3 to 6 months. That may be the difference. They qualified in July and now they don't qualify. They now just fell out of your transaction pipeline. So that's something.
Well,
Also,
and another piece is all of this is true. And I don't care if it's cash on the barrel, no appraisal, no nothing. Stuff happens. People, people die.
yep.
People become incapacitated. Literally, I had an agent who had a buyer. He had purchased multiple properties with her. He was flush as could be. The afternoon before the closing on the $900 and some odd $1,000 piece of property, his brother had him committed. So don't spend the money before it's in your hand. It's not over till the fat lady sings. I don't care how certain you are. Things happen.
Especially in this transitional market that we're in. You may have worked with this investor for the last 3 years and they were easy peasy, everything was great. And now the market slightly is different. They may not convert as well as you think. Also, there's a statistics you've heard about. Home inspections. 48% of all transactions fall apart during a home inspection. Let's be honest, last 2 years, we didn't even do them. We didn't even have home inspections on most of our transactions. So now we're coming back into a market where buyers are going to be doing home inspections, sellers are going to be asked and expected to make repairs, and may not be in alignment, and you might have fallout. So I want to make sure that these are not at 100%. And you may say, oh, but every buyer I have went under contract. Leave yourself a little meat on the bone. So in the event that something falls out, you still hit your goal. I'd hate for you to miss your goal by 5 houses because some of those fell through. What's the worst case scenario? You're a rock star and you convert everything. You sell 5 more houses than your goal. You beat your goal. Doesn't hurt to leave some caution. Last one is this appointment conversion. Because if you'll notice, it's about how many appointments we want to go on every month. It's a different mindset than just how many units I sell and how much volume I want to produce. But I don't want it to go any higher than 75%. The Millionaire Real Estate Agent book says that's the number. So why do you say that? So let's just say I'm going on 1 listing appointment every month and I'm killing it. I get every single one of those listings every single time. As your coach, my challenge would be to you that you're not going on enough appointments, because what if you were intentional about going on 2 appointments and you got one every month, and occasionally you got both every month, right? So you actually would squeeze more juice out of those appointments. Example with buyers, same thing. Maybe you're going on 4 buyer appointments a month, and you get all 4 of them to sign buyer agency agreements, and all 4 of them go into your pipeline and then work through your conversion onto sold. I would challenge you that you're not going on enough appointments. You really should not be at 100% on these appointments. That means your skill is good, but that means you can think bigger. That means you can go on more appointments because you can squeeze out 2 or 3. Losing a buyer, losing a seller appointment actually shows that you're really intentional about increasing your appointments. And I don't want you to go into a mindset of, oh, but if think about like somebody that's up to bat, you know, in a professional baseball, they swing the bat, they don't always hit the ball and make a home run every single time, right? Yet they swing the bat with the same intentionality, the same skill, and sometimes it knocks it out of the ballpark, sometimes it goes left, sometimes it goes right, sometimes they get caught and they strike out, right? But if they keep swinging at the bat, the more and more they swing, the more and more they're playing in that focused environment, the better they get. So I don't want you to change this to a higher percentage. If you are a newer agent, I do have a tendency to bump it down a little bit. And it's not because you're not talented. It's just you haven't been in the game. You haven't been in, don't have the experience. So you may go on 1 or 2 appointments a month and you may not get them. And it may not be your fault, or it may be a skill that we do need to coach you up to. So I want you to be rock stars, but again, I want you to keep it real and keep it fierce with the reality of these numbers.
You
right?
also want to, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
You
you're good.
also want to have enough appointments so that you're not saying yes to everything.
Yes.
You're going to go on listing appointments, and if they want you to do a flat fee, or they want you to, you know, they want open houses every Saturday and every Sunday, and you to be present at every showing, and blah, 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 blah. You don't want to be in a position where you're saying yes to things that don't fit your business standard.
Right.
Okay. You know, a buyer who refuses to sign an agency agreement or refuses to get pre-qualified or provide you with a pre-qualification letter, thank you, but no thank you. I'm not a tour guide. That's not how I work. So you've got to have enough appointments to also be able to say yes to what you win and what meets your standard and your business model.
Totally 100%. Yeah, it's honestly a lot of times when you're creating these goals, guys, it's about your time. It's not about the money. It really is, because if your time is better spent prospecting for new leads rather than trying to hold a deal together with, you know, bubble gum and duct tape, that's just the reality. So I think when you're clear on what you know you want to accomplish, that's why we don't go with, hey, units and volume and just we're done with this business planning clinic. What we basically want to do is say, no, it's about how many appointments. So in this example, I want to go on 1 seller appointment a month, and I want to go on 2 buyer appointments. So I want to go on 3 appointments. I'll give you a little bit of a organizational system hack. I put my fake or intentional appointments in my calendar for every week. So in this example, I actually would have 3 red squares. So I use Google Calendar, and I have appointment 1, question mark, 2, question mark, and appointment 3, question mark, and I have it in bright red. And that smacks me in the face every single week and says, I have to go on 3 appointments. And as I set those appointments, I edit that Google Calendar, and appointment 1 is with John Smith at 3 o'clock. I then now have that set appointment, right? So the cool thing is that you're going to take these goals and actually infuse it into your reality, into a system of actually time management. If you know you needed to go on 3 appointments every week or every month to hit your goal for 2023, all you got to do is focus on the 3. If I woke up Monday morning and you go, I need 3 appointments this week, what can I do to be intentional about it? Whether it's a buyer, whether it's a seller, whatever it is, and then changing those calendar reminders, for me, that helps. And what I do at the end of each month is I go back through my red squares and I see how many appointments I've held. And literally, that's what I go through. Like, I don't mind sharing you guys my calendar, but that's something to, let me go back. So there's one that I held last week. You can see I don't have as many red. This was a crazy week where I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that week to the previous week. So I want you to think about is how do I take these goals and appointments and everything that we need to do, and how do you infuse it into your business to where you can see and live these every single day, not just a pretty piece of paper on a business planning workshop. Okay. All right. So we're getting near kind of the end of session 1, which is good. So we went through the different difference between buyer and seller. The last kind of component is we want to make sure that you are focused on your money. One of the things that I know as a real estate agent getting started 20 years ago was that I started to make good money and I made bad decisions on where the money went, as far as how I spent it or where I saved it. And so there's a book that I love. I read it a few years ago, reread it last year. It's a great book if you need to read a book about money. If those of you that don't love money, as far as talking about money, I know you all love money. But when you're not an CPA, you're not an accountant by nature. You're not great at organizing your money. This book is a very easy, simple way for you to kind of get real with your expenses and get real with your money. So going into next year, one of the challenges I would, commit to you or challenge you with is be really intentional with the income that you're creating, because we don't know what the market's going to be in the next 3 to 5 years. And wouldn't it be great for you to thrive in a recession where you have you're flush with cash, where you're paying your bills and you have good opportunities of future investments. So book in a very 30-second commercial is you have 4 basically buckets of money. You have your tax account, you have your owners where you pay yourself, you have your operating expenses, and then you have what they call a profit account. What old school we used to call, or we currently do, is called a savings account. The reason why it's not a savings account is I don't know about you, but sometimes in that savings account, we're not saving anything. All we're doing is it's a holding account for it to be transferred to pay another bill, right? So also in the book, it says that the 3 of the 4 need to be in one banking institution, and your profit account needs to be in a secondary. So in my example, and what I personally do is my operating, my owner's pay, and my tax account, those 3 are in my Wells Fargo account. And then my profit account is in Virginia Credit Union. And the reason why that is, because it's true, is if when times get tough or you need to pay some expenses, if it's in the same bank account, you can just transfer money from one account to another. That's aka the savings account into your expense account. And so that's important for you to kind of hide money from yourself, or to make it so challenging that your first gut instinct is to take it from your profit. The last other thing that it says is that you should always put your profit in first. So roughly when we were talking about it, these percentages aren't exactly the same because each person is different based on their income. But when we were talking about that 30, 30, 40, right? 30% expenses, 30% cost of sale, 40% profit. You got to know what your percentages are. And inside the book, it says, based on when you know what your percentages are, you transfer that money immediately. So the minute that you get paid, money gets transferred into that tax account. Money gets pushed over to your operating expenses, or I often put that as for marketing expenses. Personally, I put like 10% over there. And then owner's pay, if you're on a salary, which your CPA would love because that's easier for you for taxes. If not, how much do you need to pay yourself to keep the bills paid? But that profit account needs to be really calculated, and it needs to be transferred over. Again, if it's a secondary account like Wells Fargo and Virginia Credit, you have to write a check to yourself. You got to deposit in there because you want that to be like a vault. You want that profit account to not be disturbed. And if you read on the screen there, it says it needs to be distributed quarterly. I think in our business, you need to do it every commission check, because you wait per quarter to put that in a profit account. You and I know that it'll slide into one of these other 3 buckets. So reason why we put this in the business planning clinic is we just went all through the exercise of how to get right with our quality of life. How do we get right with tracking our expenses and knowing how many appointments we need to go on. And this is the mechanics of making all of that work So in reality, it's really in your bank account properly, okay? Last couple of things, and then we'll be done for this session, is we did give you guys a budget spreadsheet. The beauty of this is that this is actually a itemized list on the left-hand side of every taxable income or expense that the IRS uses to write off taxes. So beautiful thing is, as long as you don't mess up the spreadsheet, your CPA or your accountant will love that because it can be itemized based on what deductions you have based on the percentage of income that you're bringing in for your business. But if this is the budget model in the MREA book, Millionaire Real Estate Agent, they have a page in there that talks about what should be my expenses, right? $1 million producer is spending a lot more than a $6 million producer, or I'm sorry, yeah, $1 million producer versus 6 million. So in this example, this is a $6 million producer. This is a $40 million producer. So if you're a $6 million, so that's just your sales volume, not your income, right? You've sold $6 million worth of real estate. This is what your cost of sale, this would be roughly your profit, this would be your expenses, and this is what your income would be. You will see that it changes, right? So you're going to be, if in this bucket, $6 million, you're going to be 55% of your money is going to go to you after you've paid everybody. Again, these are approximate because it varies based on what you're spending your money on. 10 million, so you go obviously just up 4 million, your profit actually goes up, and then it kind of drops back down. The reason why that drops down is that $18 million producers have more expenses. They generally have a team or they have an admin staff. Obviously, if you're doing more transaction, that cost of sale number goes up because remember, cost of sale is only dependent upon if you're selling houses, right? So that's natural. If you're selling, 20 houses one year and you're selling 50 houses the next year, the cost of sale is going to go up because you got more stuff that you got to pay for. So just want you guys to be aware that that budget model is in there. If you're not tracking your expenses, this is a great time to start using it for 2023. If you're feeling froggy and like to use it for 2022, you can even go back through your bank statements and get some clarity on where you spent your money. So that's what that would be. All right. Let me go through a couple more slides. So MG's going to finish us out on this. This is, I want you to write this down on your piece of paper as well. We call this the commitment ladder. So if you think about it, there's like essentially 1, 2, 3, 5 spokes of this proverbial ladder. So if you kind of wrote out 5 steps on the ladder, MG's going to walk us through committing to our goals in 2023, and then we'll be finished up. So MG, you want to take it away?
Thank you. Okay, so committing to our goals. Well, this goes right back to the beginning with be.
Yes.
Who do you intend to be? You're not going to get there by accident. Okay. And then once you've got that, what will you be purposeful and intentional about? So hope is like, I'm hopeful, which that's a positive trait, but that is not a plan. That is not a strategy. I will try. I would challenge you to get rid of the word try. If your goals, if where you are with your goals is hope or try, well, then set different goals. Because you ain't going to get there with, so think about this. Is that Frank with the beard?
Yeah.
Okay, Frank, if you call me and you say, you've got tickets to the VCU basketball game at Siegel Center for this weekend, and I say, oh, well, I'll try to make it. Are you thinking that I'm going to, what does that say to you?
My friends know if I say I'll try to make something, they already know I'm not going.
Right. Well, guess what? You're not dissimilar from everyone else. I'll try to be there. That is, that's a slacker non-commitment.
That's
Okay.
Mhm.
I always say it's like a polite no. It's like a,
Well,
Yeah.
I'd rather have you say no, you know?
Yeah. especially if I'm
Uh,
buying tickets and you're not going to show up. You're paying
Right, right. Okay. So I will until something
gets
better
hard.
comes along, or I will until, what'd you say, Drew?
It gets hard.
Yeah,
'Cause
until it gets hard.
I
Well,
feel like I'm like that with diets. I'm like, oh, I will until, oh, I don't want to do that anymore.
well, and here's an example. Well, I will do the best I can. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, first of all, do we even know what our best is? I mean, really and truly, have we experienced our best yet? I certainly hope not. I mean, I'm excited and I think I've done well, but I don't want to think, well, today that's it.
Yeah.
That's the best that it's ever going to be. That's kind of a bummer. What about the rest of my life, right? Um,
Well, I think even with real estate agents now, I'll be chatting with them. I had my best year ever last year. And in my head, I'm like, we were in COVID, pandemic, we have all these moving parts. Well, now the market's different. So your best year last year, is that going to be the best year ever? Because then that's set up. That's not the, is that the floor or is that the ceiling? You know what I mean?
right. And so yesterday I had pursued this a few months ago and couldn't find anybody, and found somebody and met with them yesterday. So I am 62 years old.
Yay.
Yep. And during COVID, and at some point you can't use that as a reason anymore, but over the last few years I've gained a good bit of weight. And I've got a gym right across the street. Certainly intellectually, I know that Bluebell peppermint ice cream at 10 o'clock at night is not really
The
okay,
best. Yeah.
right? But I also know myself. And so I'll do the best I can. That's a limitation because I'm very persuasive. And I know if I rely on myself and it's not on my schedule and blah blah blah, and I know I'm not going to get in a car to go drive somewhere. There's a gym right across the street. Okay,
Mhm.
our community has a gym literally not even a block away. So I will do whatever it takes. Well, yesterday we met with a trainer who I am hiring to come and meet me at my gym. And you may go, well, that's wasteful. No, that's because I know what the best I can do is. So how do I plus myself? How do I call foul ball on the tricks that I will, so I
Flatter
will do
yourself.
whatever it takes to make this happen. So I would submit to you that things like getting lost in Facebook or emails or whatever, that's doing the best you can. When you say I'll do whatever it takes, what are you going to do? Who are you going to get? What are the resources that you've got at your fingertips? It's your attitude, but also it's getting the right equipment or armor on. And maybe none of you all trick yourselves. I do.
I do. I
And
am
and
100% that way.
if I tell you I'm doing something, I'm going to do something, I'm not going to let you down, but I'll let myself down all the time. So this commitment level, again, if it's hoping and trying, find another goal. And I would submit to you the difference between doing the best you can and whatever it takes is that extra step.
Yep.
I commit to not buying into my excuses. I commit to calling foul on myself, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this happen.
100% agree. Love it. All right. So let me recap on our homework because I want to make sure. So I'm going to be emailing you guys the PDF of the workbook and the spreadsheet for the calculator. So I'm flipping through the hard copy I have. Actually, let me flip through your copy that you have. So you guys, we want to make sure that you guys do that reflection piece. That's on page 1, technically, in the workbook. So I want you to go through that and do a good debrief with yourself, quiet space, all that. Then I want you to, second thing is to finish up your quality of life circles. Remember what you did 5 years and then what you did this past year, ranking those. And then getting into what are those action steps? What's the one thing you need to do starting now to build that 5-year plan based on those circles? And then if you haven't tracked your numbers, go find them. Go in MLS, pull that stuff because you need that to then pop in the calculator, which is right here. So all of that will give you for your homework for today. So that allows you to kind of be able to debrief and even do things more as we go forward. So basically tomorrow, we're going to go through what we call the 4 business dial. We're going to walk you through, these are the 4 dominoes that in 2023, if you took intentionality, you're going to have an amazing year. We're also going to go through a 36 touch marketing plan. We're going to show you examples of some people in our organization that are killing it with their marketing plan. It's broken down by quarter, by month. It's broken down from what type of phone calls to have, what type of client events to have, what type of direct mail pieces. We'll also be talking about our pipeline. We have what we call the dream test. And then we're going to build your 12-week plan, which will get you right through January. And we'll even give you some tips and strategies for a vision board if you've never done one of those. So that's kind of what's chalked up for tomorrow. It's the same Zoom link as today. So it's at 9:30 tomorrow. And we're going to walk through the second half of this. Does anybody have any, well, let me play it. I would love to get some ahas. Anybody that would say one thing that they wrote down that they've either heard before, but they heard it differently, or maybe something they heard that they've never heard before. Can everybody just, I know it's Zoom, so we might talk over each other, but can anybody tell me what their ahas from the hour and a half that we spent together today that you've heard from day one? Anything?
So for me, just kind of like the whole idea of vision, kind of plan, and getting your mind together. Like obviously, like those are things that I've heard just from parents, teachers, school, whatever, but kind of being able to kind of wrap it all together into one package to, I guess, kind of facilitate, what your goal is was kind of it for me, as opposed to just picking and choosing and doing one at a time or something like that. Kind of really being able to kind of sit down and put it all together to really just kind of get your master plan.
Good. Love that. Anybody else?
So I just downloaded the Audible of what is it, Profit First.
Oh yeah, I love that. Yeah,
I'm not a reader. I just feel like I
no,
never.
that's a good book on Audible, actually.
Okay, well, good, because I'm definitely not going to pick it up and read it. So to do it in the car or when I'm sitting at the desk, I just downloaded that because I really liked my goal for this year, which is going to have to go on that list of things you hit and you didn't hit.
Sure.
One of them was to hire the CPA and get myself so that I'm W-2ing myself and just.
But that's a good place to be. You have to make money in order for you to need that service. So good for you. Good. MG, do you have did you have an aha? Because we teach this workshop a lot, but
I love this workshop, and I appreciate Frank saying about you've heard all of this before, but the reality is it's not all
compartmentalized.
There we go.
a hard word to say.
It's all woven together, and it begins with like this vision, and then the game film like that time to sit with that and look at that really gives you a nice overview of and zones in on specific things, but it's sort of the umbrella, and none of this is independent of the rest. So
Correct. All interwoven. No, that's it. And I guess my aha, just because I mean, obviously I've done many workshops with goal setting, is I think one of the things is that thinking bigger, sometimes when you keep looking at all these components together, you can think bigger when you see other parts of your business or other parts of your world growing, right? So like I said, I think my aha is my business, our coaching business is going well, but how do those other 5 or 6 quality of life cycles impact that, right? So if I'm healthier, I could have more energy and I actually could do more business because I feel more energetic. I feel more connected to what my passion is, right? But if I'm gaining weight, lethargic, and feel like I need to take a nap, that's obviously going to long-term affect my productivity as well. So I think that was my aha, is it's all connected. So, all right, well, thank you guys for your time, and I'll send you this recording. So if you want to recap it any way tonight, you can. Second thing attached will be the PDF of the workbook if you want to feel like you want to print it off or reference any sheets for it for your homework. And the third is that Excel spreadsheet so you can use the goal calculator. All right, so I'll see you guys tomorrow, and we'll see you guys soon. All right, bye everybody.
You guys.
bye.
Bye.
All right, bye everybody.